great to be back with you.
I understand you were at the White House yesterday. Tell us about that visit.
I tell you, it was very quiet at the White House. The whole time I was there, I believe I was the only visitor. Kellyanne told me that they have barred almost everybody coming to the White House right now because of the concerns over coronavirus. They did a temperature measure on my forehead, as they do every staff coming in the morning. But it's a quiet place. Everyone's observing social distancing, but everyone is focused on coronavirus. I stopped in to see my good friend Chris Liddell, who's the Deputy Chief of Staff, and he's responsible for managing all of the work streams that the White House is pursuing with various policy options. His board is white with all those policy options right now. It is 100% focused on, first, the health concerns with coronavirus, and then bringing our economy around. And my visit there yesterday was first to explain how the economic impact is being felt here, how we're having a disproportionate impact in larger cities versus more rural counties. So there's a real timing factor in all of this, and taking a one-size-fits-all approach will not work for the United States. It certainly wouldn't work in our state. And we talked specifically about how we address strategic sectors, and as we come out of this, how we're going to bring our economy back roaring strong, and particularly how we're going to get strategic industries back and reshored in the United States. And they particularly wanted my expertise just because I'd served as Commerce Secretary here in Tennessee, Secretary of Economic and Community Development, at a time when things weren't good in Tennessee, and we made our state number one in the nation on my watch. And when I was in Japan, we increased Japan's investment in the United States and made Japan number one as an investor in America during the 3 years of the president's tenure so far. So we were there talking specifically about how we identify strategic industries, how we get them back on shore, and how we get our economy turning again. We went through the specifics of the package that had been laid out. I think we need to let that package settle in a bit. They're already talking about, particularly the Democrats, already talking about a fourth package. My view is, let's see how this first package goes through. And if we're able to turn the health side of this sooner than later, that may be enough. What I certainly don't want to have happen is allow Nancy Pelosi to use yet another crisis to push more of her Green New Deal and socialist agenda through. I'll tell you this, too. My family and I are praying every day for President Trump. I hope your listeners will all help us, too, to pray for him. His leadership has made all the difference in the world.
How long were you in the White House? Were you there for an hour or 2 hours? How long was your visit there?
I was there for about 3.5 hours.
3.5 hours? That's a long time. And did you have an opportunity to speak directly with the president? He was pretty busy.
No, I wasn't with the president. I was with staff yesterday.
Got it. But your recommendations, what do they do with your recommendations?
Well, the teams that they're putting together right now are really focused on the economy and how we move things forward. So my inputs are really from a practical perspective. And what they need from me is some help because of my business background, some help thinking about, practically speaking, how to identify those industries that need to move back from a strategic standpoint, and then what types of programs do we need to put in place to make that possible. So that's what they're looking for, and then my voice on how it's being felt across the country. I mean, they realize that they are in a bubble there in Washington. Things are very different here in Tennessee.
Quite different.
I think we represent, the best of America here in Tennessee, and we're feeling it the way other states are as well. I mean, it's a very different story if you talk to a mayor, 4 or 5 counties away from here, Davidson County, who may have 0 or 1 or 2 cases, versus the situation happening right in the center of Nashville or in the center of Memphis.
Exactly. Well, you were the ambassador to Japan for a couple years, and I note with interest that Japan has only 2,384 cases right now out of a population of, 100 million or so? And
population larger than that, 126 million.
126 million, and there's 57 deaths. In contrast, here we have 327 million Americans, 215,000 cases, 5,000 deaths. What do you think we can learn from Japan on this?
This is exactly the question Jared Kushner asked me yesterday. What can be learned from Japan? And I'm putting in place a network of business people there in Japan who are going to help us. If they're a month ahead of us, the question goes, as they begin to bring their economy back up, are there lessons that we can learn? And the point that Jared made is, Bill, you have more of the CEOs in Japan
You know, I saw a report, literally, I think, early this morning that said perhaps that they were seeing a little bit of a spike up in Japan. I guess that's what you're referencing then, right?
Yeah, there were a number of new cases that were reported. It's nighttime there, but last night a number of new cases were reported, so they have that concern that this could spike in various regions, and I think this is something we're going to watch carefully to see if it might happen in the United States as well. But they are in the process right now of making plans to bring their economy out. They didn't respond the same way we did.
Yeah, how are they different on this than we were?
One, they're limited by Constitution. They can't by fiat shut companies down. They can make a request. Japanese tend to comply with government requests there, but the extent of the shutdown, I think, has not been as great as it has been here. The other question that I'm asking right now as well is, has the extent of testing been the same as it has here? I want to make sure we're comparing apples to apples when we have these conversations. You've seen the same charts. I know the charts you're talking about, Mike, in Japan is at a fundamentally lower level. Let's just make certain we're talking apples to apples. But if that's the case, they're going to be ahead of us turning out of this. And I think there's a lot we can learn from their experience. We may be able to help them, but I think they could definitely help us.
And how many CEOs have you spoken with in Japan, Japanese CEOs, have you spoken with in the past 24 hours?
In the past 24 hours, I've only spoken with 3. Well, but over the past several months, I've spoken with dozens of them.
Of the 3 you spoke with in the past 24 hours, what sense do you get from them? And
optimism. Yeah, I'm sensing optimism. You know, Japan, they used to call it Japan Inc., Mike. It's a very business-oriented economy. I think that's why I did so well there as ambassador, just because of my strong business experience. And I had a lot of business friends there from when I lived in Japan many, many years ago when I was with Boston Consulting Group. So they're optimistic on getting their business turned back on, but they still have real supply chain issues, the same that we're going to be dealing with as well. To the extent they're relying on China, there's serious dislocations there. Other countries that have been affected by the virus are impacting their supply chains too, so that's what they're focused on right now, is bringing back their supply chains as well as getting their domestic market going. I say this, they also share the same perspective that we do. The Deputy Prime Minister of Japan today said the World Health Organization should be called the China Health Organization. They've been apologizing for China so much. We all know where this virus came from. It's from China, from Wuhan, China. And had the Chinese not tried to hide this and cover it up in the beginning, we'd be at a far different place and a far better place. They've had a devastating impact, not only on their own people, but now they've had a devastating impact all across the world on our human population and on our economies. And the Chinese see it the same way we do as well.
Increasingly, we're seeing reports that they're dramatically understating the number of cases they've had and the number of deaths. In fact, apparently, the intelligence community provided a report on that effect to the president. He handled it, I think, quite diplomatically in his task force report yesterday. But I look at the numbers from China. I don't believe a single one of them. I think they're lying. That's my view.
I'd say all the Japanese CEOs would agree with you. They blame the Chinese communist regime just the way I do. That regime is more interested in retaining its own power than it is in protecting its own people. They've been running a publicity campaign, not a public health campaign, and they've created tremendous damage. But the CEOs, I talked to one last night. He said that they had some type of proof that there was a tremendous number of urns that had been purchased just from one location to dispense with incineration of the bodies, far more than the Chinese.
And we've seen reports of exactly that same thing in other news outlets. Last question: when you talk, you're fluent in Japanese, but you've been away there for a while. When you talk with these Japanese CEO, do you speak in Japanese or English?
Mostly in English, because most of the international CEOs have got good English ability, or they will have a translator in the room. I can speak with them in Japanese, but their English is generally better than mine.
Well, there you go. Former ambassador.
Joke in Japanese. That's the test. That's the test, Mike.
Former ambassador to Japan and Senate candidate Bill Hagerty. Thanks so much for joining us, and will you come back again and keep us updated on all this?
I'll look forward to it, Mike. Thank you for giving me a chance to reconnect with your leaders. And again, remember, join me and my family in praying for President Trump as we navigate all of this. He's doing a great job. He needs our prayers and our help.
Bill Hagerty, thanks for joining us. We'll be back after this.